Let's see if I can get a better angle. What's going on, everybody? This is Greg Ward coming from the Common Law Rights Society, and we got my man Robert Michael from Truth and Trust in the house tonight. What's going on, Robert?
Hey, man, not much, just doing my thing, living day by day.
I know it, giving thanks, right?
Yep, every day.
So yeah, we wanted to have Robert on to see what you were up to, what the latest in the world of Truth and Trust is.
I'm glad you asked that, because Truth and Trust is kind of just sitting there at the moment. I'm building structures in the background. One of the new things is the ministry. So I put together the ministry, the Unity of Divine Creation Ministry. And, I'm continually working to build that structure even more. So I've got a constitution that I'm working on, and then I'm going to start bringing members in. But the members will only be, and it's not discrimination. I'm not saying I'm going to discriminate, but I can't bring in U.S. citizens. It can't happen. So unless somebody does a declaration of status and they do a proper procedure, then yeah, sure, you're more than welcome in the ministry, because I know that if anything comes down, I can stand on what you did and I can represent you. I can be your counsel. I can be your minister under an authorized representative agreement to speak for you in any situation. But if you don't have those documents, I can't do it, because that's taken over the U.S. citizen. I can't do that. It's not my property, So that's what I'm working on, man. It's getting bigger, and all the pieces are just coming into play, man. So
Beautiful. It's
beautiful. Really good.
Something, I'm working on a channel called Law and Logic.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's awesome.
I think that, for the basis of the channel is to look at law from a logical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I think that so many people take law in these complicated thought processes, when for me, it's always come down to trespass and contract law, right?
Mm-hmm.
So always come down to if someone trespasses your body or your property, then you could bring them, quote unquote, into a court of law under a writ of trespass, right? They basically came against you in some way. You have a claim against them. If they broke their contract, or you broke your contract, then the law of contract is like you brought up the idea of divine contract.
Mm-hmm.
Law is a divine right.
Mm-hmm. Right? Absolutely. Private contract. That's right.
Exactly.
That's why it's protected under Article 1, Section 10.
Exactly. So I love to look at roots of law in that manner.
Yeah. Law is very simple. People are lost because they don't understand where law comes from. The modern day law comes from the Bible. Okay. They even tell you that the law is based on Christianity, and whether you're a Christian or, some other religion doesn't matter. That's how they built the law structure. Okay. So who came up with the law in the Bible? Well, another man did, obviously, because what that man is saying is, well, I'm talking to God, and God's telling me, well, shit, I can talk to God too.
Yep.
So that must mean I have a direct connection to the law. And it's that simple. Right. And like you said, there's only one true crime, and that's injury, which is trespass.
Exactly. Exactly.
The problem we have is everyone is already owned. So the law of, I say the law, but if you don't take care of that ownership and claim that ownership, you're never going to be able to stand on those God-given rights. You're not. You're already barred from it because you haven't grown up enough. You haven't learned yet to become a mature, responsible adult to govern yourself and take that property back. Right. And that's what people are, they never file their declaration of status. I was one of them. Or recorded, I should say, not filed. I was one of them. And I thought I was so good with that God's law, because I was blowing shit up, man, in courtrooms everywhere. But when it came down to it and they wanted me in cuffs and shackles, they put me there, and I had nothing, no records to rebut it. All I had were my private stuff. Well, that's all well and good. But what does the law say? The law says if I'm going to do something that affects my brother, my neighbor, I need to go to my neighbor and say, hey, just giving you notice, this is what I'm doing. Okay. So that's where the public records come in. You're doing your equity. You're doing your due diligence. You're letting your brothers and sisters know, and now you have a record, And that's the thing too, you know, how many contracts have we signed as a US citizen? I mean, we probably can't even think of all the ones we've signed in our lives, you know?
Well, that's what it comes down to. Once again, it's all contract law, right? It's
Sure.
like you said, it's either trespass or it's contract law. And really, as you said, people are caught up in the middle of that matrix contract, and
Sure.
you're teaching them how to regain that control back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you said the word matrix, because if you watch some of these educational videos for attorneys where they go in and they play court, right? That's what they do. They set up and they act.
Right.
Okay. And this is how they train attorneys and teach them. They even call it the matrix in there. They call the birth certificate is called the matrix. Look it up in your Black's Fourth dictionary. Look up the definition of matrix. Okay. It is a root document that a nexus is built off of.
Right.
Okay. So that in itself is the core. And that's why I always say, I don't know why everyone's out there running around trying to do all these remedies when they haven't taken care of the root.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Well,
like trying to play lead guitar before you even understand how the chords work.
okay. Well, so let's start there, and I agree with you because they have to, again, all systems are built off of a root point, as you say, right?
Mhm.
All jurisdiction obtains through a contract of some sort somewhere that began someplace. So
Mhm.
if it's at the birth certificate, and then you see all the other contracts that come off of that, then you start to more easily see where those fall in line, or, you know, I mean, you get to start to see a structure, rather than it being a magical thing that just took place, right?
Right.
Law, once again, unless it's a dictatorship, law is not magic.
Right.
Law follows the lineage of contracts,
Mhm.
right? So,
100%.
okay, so
And
go ahead.
oh,
Go.
go ahead.
I want you to tell the people, so without giving all, you know, I mean, all your secrets away or whatever, and I don't mean that.
I don't have any.
I don't mean that. I mean, so you're helping to guide people in a certain direction, and so I'm sure there's lots of people out there who want to be able to do it on their own, and if they're going to struggle and they're going to have a hard time, they're going to probably come to you for help. But
Mhm.
what can you tell the people when you speak about what Truth and Trust offers? Try to give it a layout of what, say, somebody came to you and said, well, what am I going to benefit by learning these things?
Okay, well, Truth and Trust in its form right now, um, and I say that because we're doing a lot of back end work. Pretty soon, the whole thing's going to change, the whole face of it. The idea was to offer something as minimal as we could cost, and as informative and straight to the point. Not all this guru stuff, not all this extra hubbub. So when you go to the Truth and Trust site and you pay I think it's like $90 for both procedures, you know, you get all these videos, you get instructional where to put information, you get document templates, all of that stuff to do everything you need from start to finish to build your record of status correction is in there for those two costs. Okay. Now there's a third phase, if you want to call it, and that's where this is my idea, my thing. It doesn't, and I don't mean that in a selfish way. What I'm saying is people can disagree with me or agree. I really don't care. This is just how I see it and do it. So you can take my information and apply it your way, just like I did with everybody else's stuff that I was learning. So how I do this is I see somebody, I listen to them, you know, like a Gene Keating or a Yusuf El or something. And then I go and I do the research behind it, look up the cases, do all that stuff so I can understand it. And then I apply it in my own way.
Right.
So you can do that with my stuff. But I basically, when you go to Truth and Trust, you have 3 phases. And the third one, you don't need to do to correct status. Third phase, so you have, let's go backwards. So you've got the declaration of status. Okay, that's first.
This is the first.
And
this is for $90. You're saying the first stage.
first stage, like $95 or something like that. I don't even know my own prices. But, you know, preliminary to that, you have to authenticate the certificate of live birth. And that's all on there. Everything is on there, how to do it, what to do. Okay. And then you go into the declaration of status and the particular documents that I put in there and how to record that and where to record it if you can't get it recorded in your county because they're just ignorant. I use Lamar County, Georgia. I've even been there and visited with Bill Hewitt, the clerk, and I mean, he's got stacks. Everybody from the whole country's record stuff there, and he's like, man, this thing went all out on the internet, and I just can't get ahead. I mean, he's got stacks of stuff that people want recorded. awesome guy. But anyway, you can send it there and it will get done. So I walk people through that part, right? The declaration status has templates. You can fill them out, do your thing. I really encourage everyone to do their own homework and understand what that thing says. There's a typo in the one, okay? And I've had it up there now for over a year, and only one guy has come to me and said, hey, do you realize this says section 3 and it should say section 8 or something like that? And I'm like, I'm glad you pointed that out. You're the first guy in a year. That tells me nobody's reading this shit. That's bad.
I think it's worth pointing out when you're doing stuff regarding your status, regarding law, always want to do the research on what you're filling out and sending in.
Yeah, man.
No matter who you get it from, even, I tell people about myself, don't believe me, go check it out.
Don't take my word for it. Please don't take my word for it. That's the worst thing you could do, because you're not internalizing it. You're not living it. So when I would learn from other guys, that's what I would do. It's not that I didn't believe them. It's that I needed to know. So I needed to look at the detail. So when I read the detail and over, it sank into my brain. Now I know what that guy's talking about. Yep. And yes, I agree, or no, I disagree, but at least it's an informed disagreement, Exactly. So I encourage everybody to do that. So that's the first phase. Okay. Then the second phase is you have to give notice, right? And there are certain particular entities under the Trading with the Enemy Act that are holding the property of the aliens. We are the aliens. So the alien property custodians are, in the Trading with the Enemy Act, it's the President, the Secretary of Treasury, and the Attorney General. So they need to be notified. So I combine all of that, my notice, into a administrative process security agreement. It's a security agreement is all it is. And I have my own security agreement number, and I tell everybody on there why every piece is where it is and what it means. I have my own security agreement number. I place a $1 stamp on there, okay? And it's a definitive stamp. As long as you're using a definitive $1 stamp from the post office, that's good. All right, because what you're doing is you're putting it in UPU, Universal Postal Union jurisdiction, which is international contract. That's huge. And you're also providing $1 consideration for the contract. And because you're putting the stamp in the top right corner, in the back right corner, on the back page, you're foreclosing anyone from flipping the back of that instrument over and turning it into a bond or a financial instrument to use for themselves. They can't do that because you have the last say with the stamp on the end. It's already done. Okay, so I teach people how to do the administrative process, how to default them. The templates are there. Once that's done, then you go, oh, okay, now I didn't really get into UCC on there because everybody's got this idea that they're just going to become secured party creditors and there's a pot of gold waiting for me, However, one of the things I did after that was I put a notice out in the public, which is a UCC1. Now, there's a lot of argument out there, and I'm going to dispel this real quick, okay? Oh, you follow UCC1, you just went into, federal jurisdiction, you just gave them jurisdiction. No, you don't. How is that even possible when the UCC1 doesn't even have a signature line on it? That's how you know right from the jump. That's not a binding. There's nothing binding there. There's no signature. How can it be binding?
What is it? It's just a notice?
Use all of UCC1, and we even had the UCC office tell us this and confirm it, although we already knew it when it came out of their mouth. We were like, that's what we've been saying. All a UCC1 is a public notice of a private interest, which makes you either the creditor or the debtor, depending on which side you're on. Right. That's all UCC1 is. It's a public notice of a private interest, and it's in the UCC1 filing system so that somebody can find it easily. Right. You can have a private interest in something without recording a UCC1 and have an equitable lien, which I also have an equitable lien, which comes out of an equitable lien isn't a piece of paper. It's a procedure that you've done to show you've done your due diligence to prove that no one else has an interest in that property. That's all an equitable lien is. But in the United States system, I want a notice so that they know, hey, yeah, this dude's got interest. I mean, it's right here. We don't have to search. It's not esoteric. It's not hidden. It's not private. It's right there. He put it out in the public, you know? So then after that, I did a legal ad notice in the county of the debtor, where the debtor was born, right? So the debtor, right, is dead, the entity, the debtor. The county I was born in, took out a legal ad, did an exchange saying, hey, I've already notified the proper parties. Nobody's responded. John Henry Doe, social security number, blah, 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 blah. I put my whole damn social security number in there. I didn't even care, you know. Well, identity theft. Really? That was stolen at birth. What are you talking about? I'm not worried about that. So I put it in there and said, on such and such a date, after 3 weeks of this notice running, if no one objects and has to, you know, and objects in this manner, and I laid out, you know, send registered or certified mail to an address, blah, 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 then if no one objects, the property is going to be exchanged into a private trust. Okay. That's where I veered off and did my own thing.
Right.
And I took the entity after the first 2 phases I just laid out and the UCC one that I did, and I exchanged that, and I gave up any sort of relation, ownership, or whatever in the entity into a private trust.
Right.
So now when people hear me talk, they think I'm talking about my Sesta key. No, I'm not talking about my Sesta key. I'm talking, what's that?
You created your own trust. You know what I mean? It wasn't
I'm talking about, right, my own private Massachusetts trust, you know, business trust, because why not put a business entity in a business trust? You know, it just makes sense. And I exchanged it in there. So now when something occurs, I do an affidavit from the executor, right? Because let's think about this. What happens when an executor in a will is dealing with an estate? He has to, and people don't read probate code, man. Read the probate code. They're telling you how to do everything in there. They're telling you everything right there in the probate code. Now, you don't do it statutorily, you do it privately, but they're telling you how to do it even privately. You just don't register the shit, you know? It's just, it applies on both sides of the fence, you know? So now think about it. What happens in a will? You got an executor who does what? He winds up the estate. All the executor does is pay out the, you know, the creditors and all that stuff, and he winds up the estate so he can go, done.
Yep.
So I write my affidavit from the executor. It doesn't matter what the issue is. I don't care if it's IRS, a traffic ticket. I don't give a shit what it is. The first thing I do is administrative process their ass. Bam. You know, you got 3 days to admit this or deny. Bam, 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 bam. Okay. And then affidavit from the executor. I'm the executor. I'm letting you know, here is all my equitable steps. Here's my book and page number, Lamar County, Georgia, where all the records are located. You look them up. I'm not sticking them in a stack in this damn mailing. That's your job. They're there. I don't have to send them in the mail, you know. So and I'm not sending them 50 pieces of paper. They don't even read it. However, it's their due diligence now because it's in my executor affidavit. And I say, you know, the executor has done all this. Bam, 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 wound up the estate and whoop, threw it over into a trust. Then I come from the other side and I go, okay, now I'm the manager. I switch my hat and I go, I'm the manager of the trust. I'm not the trustee. I've been appointed by the trustees to handle the business of the trust. And the business of the trust is to give you an order to dismiss this with prejudice because X, Y, Z. And like I said, man, we were talking before we got on the show that I've done it 3 times so far, and every time, bam, they just drop shit. They don't even mess with it, man. They're like, okay, done.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it's
and all through the mail.
And all through the mail. I've never appeared. I don't appear. I don't go. Fuck that shit. Hell no. You know. Now, if I had to appear, I would appear specially. Okay, and that's, you got to understand how to do that. You can't, the minute you even respond or you file an answer, if you file an answer to a complaint, you've already given general jurisdiction, which means the court has jurisdiction over you.
Right.
You know, the first thing you do, now you can motion the court without filing an answer. You can motion for a dismissal, and that's not considered general jurisdiction. But your point has to be a challenge of jurisdiction from the jump.
Right.
And that's it. You know, that's how you appear specially.
Right. You're not gonna make a motion, like you said, for anything other than the challenge.
Dismiss for lack of jurisdiction. Yep.
Because
and we did that.
So once again, not, I mean, not to go back to the law and logic idea, but it's only logical. You're not going to ask a judge to decide any issues that he doesn't have jurisdiction over. And if you ask him to decide it, you're giving him jurisdiction.
Right. Yes, that's why I love the idea, man, that you're what you're working on, because you're absolutely right. I've used more common sense than I have actual legal speak and law, you know? And I read their codes and shit, man. Trust me, I used to be a code hound, man. I'd be all in that for hours and hours searching, tying pieces together, but I never use their code. I don't write their codes down. I take the language out of the code
Right.
and I use the language because I'm like, the best thing about that is if it ever came down to having them beholden to their own law, I've got all the verbiage in there from their law. It's a no-brainer. You guys should know this. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. You need to know your law. I just wrote the words down.
Exactly. You could read their code, and then once you see their code, you can interpret it backwards and see where you want to be, because they'll talk about their jurisdiction and where it's obtained. You just stand outside of that. You just stand outside of that. Once again, you have to look at if you're all in this jurisdiction of their code, you got to go back down to the root once again and snip them out. Snip them where their root is, and get back to that root level of law. Like you said, when you create that private contract, you're working outside of God's law, which gets interpreted as common law. So you have your common law right of contract, and that's the place where they don't have jurisdiction over you, because their world didn't exist yet, right? When man's divine right of contract exists, their world didn't exist yet, because they were only created out of that same realm.
Right.
Out of that same realm of two men coming together and creating a government, you are now using that same place of creation and creating your private trust, which stands side by side to their government, technically speaking, because it's
exactly.
Yeah.
Right, because who created all law on earth? Man.
Exactly.
So if man created law on earth, well, then I can create it too. As long as I'm not breaking the universal law, which is very simple. It's like we were talking about, it's injury. Do not harm or injure another person or their property. It's that simple. So use of L does a great job of breaking down public and private. Public is anything to do with the state. Constitutional law is public. Statutory law is public. Tort law is private. Family law, private. I mean, that's all. It's just, you got to understand where the line's drawn. But all these people, they want to go in the court and they want to fight, and they think they're going to do this and that and the other. And it's like, you've already lost by playing the game. You lost by playing the game.
Right. They want you to come in there and be the defendant.
Yeah, exactly. They want you to be the defendant.
Yeah.
And all you're doing is going into another contract situation where money's at play. And because you don't understand how money works, you lose. It's the bottom line. It's nothing to do with, I'm going to get them on this code and that. They're laughing as they go in their chambers, because they're like, doesn't matter. The attorney's got the bond and you're screwed, because we're just selling bonds. I mean, and you've agreed to be the surety for the bond, you dummy, and it's that simple.
A long time ago. Not just in that case.
Right.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, now that's why, go back to the root. You take care of the organization, the birth entity, okay? You claim that thing, and then, well, I should say I did. I claimed that thing, and I gave up ownership to another entity, and I gave plenty of notice. So now anyone operating that entity, like the state, using, and I made sure that I'm very clear on the social security number with dashes, and then I write, / without dashes. Anything tied to those accounts and shit is off limits. No one has authority to do that. Now, does that mean it just stopped and the whole world opened up and, I got this pot of gold? No. But it does mean when I throw the hammer down and the trust comes in and says, wait, what are you doing? You're operating our property? Really? Well, just so you know, there's a $33 billion lien on that property. So are you going to pay the lien? I think we need to charge you, and then they're fucked, because they're operating property that there's a whole record of certified and registered records that they were given plenty of notice to stop operating that entity.
That's what I was going to say. You gave them plenty of notice that they ignored every step along the way.
Right. And all the records are in line. And I made sure that and this is why I'm trying to get what I did out there so that people hopefully will grasp what I actually did. Everything I did was very connected to the next step. I didn't go, let me try a UCC here. Let me put a motion in there. Let me do this. And then all this shit all over the place. No, everything was very calculated, clean cut, one into the other. Bam, bam. So now whenever I do an affidavit, all the same points, I make them in every one. Bang, bang, bang. And then maybe the last 4 or 5 are relative to the situation. And it only takes a few points and knock them right out of the box. Because everything's unconscionable contract at that point. I didn't sign any contract. What do you talk? Please provide the contract. Under the Reconstruction Act, you're a different government. You're not the republic. So under that, where's my contract with you? And man, they drop shit, man. They're like, oh fuck, operating maritime, without a contract. I don't know what you're doing here.
Well,
so yeah.
And you speak about maritime. That makes me think once again about insurance, right? Because all insurance I've heard is under maritime law. And I don't know.
All maritime. Yep. It's all maritime. And that's why everything is insurance, because it's all about cargo. It's all about shipping. It's all about loss, claim of loss.
Well, let's even think in terms of the money itself. Carl Miller once pointed out, he said, when he goes into court, I'll try to remember his wording, but he says, I'm an unenfranchised common law free man. And he says, I don't participate in what did he say? I don't participate in a joint venture with limited liability. Basically, he's talking about all this in one thing. He's saying I'm unenfranchised, which means I'm not using a social security number, right? I'm not franchised. And he's saying I'm a common law free man. So he's declaring status in a sense, right? He's saying, in a sense, and he's saying, I'm not on a joint venture with limited liability. This money that we use is a limited liability money. It used to be substance for substance, right? Lee Brops pointed out once. He said, under the old regime, if you will, before the bankruptcy, you had substance for substance. Greg Ward wants to trade Robert Michael a piece of gold for his bicycle. I give you the gold, you give me the bicycle, and that contract is done. We both receive consideration, and no one else has anything to say about it. But when you have now discharge of debt with non-substance backed money, right? And it's a third-party intervener because the Federal Reserve is looking to get paid at the end of the line, right? Because it's an IOU that still has to be paid at some point. And so you're using this non-substance-based money for the discharge of debt, like a limited liability of debts, in a sense. And anyway, I don't know. I guess that idea that Lee Brops had pointed out that's when it kind of lifted it off the ground into this, I guess you're saying, this maritime jurisdiction, where it's always this, right? You have the social insurance, you have this limited liability money operating in bankruptcy, it seems. And so it's off the ground into this credit-based bankruptcy system. And again, it's within the confines of a new contract.
That's right. Let's break down the Constitution real quick for people that are just coming into this. I mean, the Constitution is a bankruptcy trust document. Okay. The country has been in bankruptcy ever since. And every time the country gets ready to come out of bankruptcy, an event happens and they throw us back into bankruptcy. Because for countries, bankruptcy is forgiven 70 years. For people, it's 7. So a country is 70. So do the math. Okay, 1789, 1790, the Constitution is ratified. What happened 70 years after that? 1860, the Civil War. Bam, we were just about to be out of bankruptcy. Oh, not now, right? 70 years later, when we're coming out of bankruptcy again, what happened? Oh, 1930, stock market crash. I mean, do the math. 70, it's perfect. 70 and 70, bam. Okay, now we're in bankruptcy.
Yeah, and pre-planned up to it. You had the Federal Reserve Act coming at the same time as.
Oh, it's all They knew it. See, that's the thing. They're thinking in 70-year increments to make sure we stay in bankruptcy, and we can't even think past 5 minutes because of our instant gratification. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then they did it with 9/11, right? This what's 70 years from 1930, 9/11, right? Now it was a year off, but still they knew, oh shit, they're out of bankruptcy, hit them, bam, you know. It's so easy to see, man. It's like, so we get into this whole, yeah, it's all about money and bankruptcy, but guess what? None of that shit pertains to us because we're not party to the contracts that they're passing around in their little world. So you were mentioning earlier about the Social Security and all that stuff, right? So my defense is always, wait a minute, are you saying I have a number? You're telling me you are telling me that I am going against God's law, my God, right? My God, I'm a Christian man, and you're telling me I have a mark of the beast. Are you forcing me to have a mark of the beast, Judge? Are you forcing me to have a mark of the beast? You know, you want to see him shit bricks, man. You start talking God, dude, because, and everybody, oh, you can't bring that into court. Bullshit. I've done it every time. I'm a man of God. I cannot have a number, so I don't know who the hell you're talking about.
There's a few things you could stand on as a man, and that's one of the things that you could stand on and not be questioned. Because
your most protection is in freedom of religion and freedom of private contract. But the first thing is freedom of religion, because you know why? Because that's how they're hiding. You know, the fucking Vatican's doing all of this. How? I ask people this too, man. I lived in Maryland. I grew up, or didn't grow up, but I spent 20 some years in Maryland. And, you know, I was always fascinated by Baltimore and the Baltimore Holy See, right? The Holy See in Baltimore. And
right.
As I started researching and I started reading from a lot of the, you know, the historians and the patriots of the time and how they despised Catholicism at the time. And, you know, they were running the Catholics out of England, and the Catholics came here to avoid religious persecution. Well, they didn't want them here either. But Maryland was a Catholic state. So I find it awfully interesting if you look at the timeline, soon as the Constitution was ratified with the protection of freedom of religion, all of a sudden, the first Holy See is erected in Baltimore, not even a few months freaking later. Okay? Easy, common sense, man. You know, look at the facts, and the trail is it's easy to see. So that is our biggest protection because it's their biggest protection.
Right.
And they're not going to give up their protection, so we're going to use it.
And same thing with contract law.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's
the idea that we can create contract that stand to the same footing as government itself, hypothetically speaking, you know what I mean, is huge, because they can't, their entire operation of commercial, everything that we're dealing with still stands on the original constitutional and of the Constitution and the right. Yeah. It's the right that the people had to contract that gave them the right to swindle them voluntarily. Everybody's right.
Yeah, and that's why I put the religious freedom protection above the contract protection, even though, yes, the contract protection is very solid. However, there's a fine line that you could go into the other world with contract by contracting with them.
Right.
You can't do that with freedom of religion because they can't do anything in religion. They can't, they're not of God. So there is no, oops, I made a mistake. No, you're either of God or you're not. Which is why, what do? They use contract to get the churches to turn into 501c3 so they can regulate God, right? However, and you know this, if you're 508c1, or if you're 508c1a,
right,
they can't touch it.
Yeah.
Which is why they force churches to be 508 or 501c3s. But anyway, that's another topic.
You're absolutely right.
So yeah, I pull all those principles. I mean, look, I didn't even get into this yet, but I'm going to get into it on Truth and Trust and the new ministry site and all that. You know, I also sent the Pope and the Vatican through the down there at the Vatican embassy, the nuncio. Okay, I notified him and I excommunicated. I don't care if you're Catholic or not. You should still excommunicate. You got a birth certificate. That's a baptismal certificate. But I was Catholic. So I took my baptismal certificate, and I excommunicated it. And I wrote my letter of excommunication in gold on parchment paper, handwritten in gold, and I signed it, thumbprinted it, and sent that bitch right over to the Pope. Here you go, man. 2 witnesses on it. I'm excommunicated. Why? Because I don't believe in hell. That's one reason for being excommunicated. I don't believe Jesus died on a cross. That's another reason for being excommunicated. Like I looked at what their reasons were for excommunication. Yeah.
I didn't know what you mean. I thought you were like basically saying the same way I turned in my driver's license, you were turning in your Catholicism, but you were saying, no, I'm going further. I'm going to make them basically kick me out.
Yeah. I said, because, the Pope must be busy and all, so clearly he can't, excommunicate everybody in the church that should be excommunicated, but I'm going to do that for you because I'm not following your shit. Okay. So therefore, in my excommunication, I no longer need the charity of the church because this is all welfare and charity. It even says right in the Constitution, in the preamble about the welfare for the people. I mean, hello, I don't need that. I'm self-governing. I'm self-controlling. I don't need any of that. And the Pope has no more spiritual, essence than I do.
Exactly. I don't need him to be my median.
No. And the Pope, which obviously stands for Papa, is subservient to only one, and that's the Holy Spirit. Well, the Holy Spirit is us. It's in every one of us. Okay, we are the Holy Spirit. So guess who the Pope's subservient to? Us. But because we're running around going, we don't have the Holy Spirit in us. Look at us. We're dead asleep. We need people to govern us. Blah, 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 blah. You're not embodying the Holy Spirit. So guess what? You are inferior to him, and he could, him and the Black Pope, they got, they pull the strings and they're the puppet masters.
Right.
So I made sure that I corrected that record too.
Nice.
And when I did my bailment, I included that in when I sent it to the Attorney General. I made sure that, just letting you know, I also CC'd, the nuncio on this, and here's my excommunication. So I'm out of Rome and I'm out of the fucking Catholic Church. I'm out of both Romes. Have a nice day. Don't let your ship come over onto my land. Don't dock it.
Have you had any responses from any of your administrators?
Oh, hell no.
Never.
No, never. And actually, when I had my criminal case dismissed because I issued my birth certificate for a bill of exchange, and no, for those that are listening, it wasn't like I just turned it into a bill of exchange and handed it to the judge and everything went away. It was a very calculated, private process. Nothing was filed. Everything was done notice. And so I gave it to the state of Maryland, and my charges were in South Carolina. So isn't that interesting? Okay, I gave Maryland $5 million on deposit with my birth certificate and a bill of exchange. So think about that. Why did the charges in South Carolina get dismissed? Let's go back to insurance.
Wait.
Okay.
You gave Maryland your birth certificate on deposit, you said?
I gave them a birth certificate with a bill of exchange on the back. Turned into an instrument that was, $5 million payable to the Maryland Treasury.
And then you also had a charge in South Carolina, which you didn't file anything with South Carolina regarding this at all?
Nope, not a single paper, man. And the charges were in South Carolina, but I was going through Maryland probate judge, right? And privately. So when it discharged the case and they dismissed it after 2 years, it was hanging there, okay? It was just sitting there, this case. They never had a hearing or nothing. It was like pending the whole time. I discharged my case and my co-defendant, who didn't even know the case was dismissed, all right? And the way you can tell that is when you dismiss a case, or a case is just an account. So when you go into court, that's why all these people going into court and trying to argue crack me up. It's like, dude, what are you arguing? They opened a bank account and now you're in there acting as the holder, okay, not the holder in due course, and you're in there doing business. It has nothing to do with these statutes and codes of bullshit. So when you dismiss a case with an instrument, you're paying the main account off. So any co-defendants are sub-accounts and everybody's case gets dismissed, okay? And that's what happened. Me and my co-defendant, he didn't even know his case was dismissed too. And the judge that dismissed it was the Attorney General. That's what it said on my dismissal sheet, Judge, Attorney General. Why is the Attorney General dismissing my case?
So, just to recap again. So you didn't just put a bill of exchange in to Maryland. You referenced the South Carolina case in Maryland.
Didn't even reference it.
So you just put some bill of exchange in to the probate?
For all the debts of the debtor.
Ah,
That was on the bill of exchange. This is, for value for all the debts, to discharge all the debts of the debtor.
and okay,
Now,
that was the first time you had ever done it, and that wasn't something that you're saying that you would do each time in addition to. You're saying at that point that was the first time you had done it, and so therefore that was a direct result of that first time doing it.
yeah, my intention wasn't even to do anything with that case in South Carolina.
Mm.
That wasn't why I was doing it. I had no intention. I didn't even, when that case got dismissed, 3 months went by before I ever even knew it was dismissed.
So
I
it
never,
got dismissed immediately after you did that. It wasn't 2 years later. It was 2 years ahead
no,
there, and then you did this thing in Maryland, and then just a few months later, it got dismissed in South Carolina.
no, 2 days later.
2 days later. So
2
basically,
days.
the system is just one big social security number matrix again.
Well, it's insurance, right? So again, there was a claim. Claim was out of South Carolina. Maryland insured did the shipping insurance to ship the cargo, right? Extradition. Maryland told me to my face in cuffs and shackles in the Secretary of State's office when I went down there. I had the prison county jail drive me down there for a hearing, a private hearing between me and the Attorney General, and I had 3 witnesses, my parents and my buddy. And the Attorney General, Assistant Attorney General, told me to my face, "You're an insurance deal." But I didn't know at that time how fucking true that. I had no idea. I just was pissed that this son of a bitch just called me insurance. I was like, "You motherfucker!" But then when I did this with no intention of dismissing that case, again, I gave it to the probate judge. I had no idea this case was dismissed. I called. Now, remember, when I was in South Carolina, I don't know if I ever told you the story, but I was pretty much forced to get an attorney or they weren't going to let me go home. I'd spent 5 months in jail and I was on an ankle bracelet in South Carolina state I'd never been to. I knew no one, and I was living with a stranger that was kind enough to put me in her home. And my life was destroyed. I lost my son. I lost my car. I lost my house. I lost everything. I just wanted to go the fuck home. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Give me an attorney. I had to borrow money, $5,000 so this attorney would get me home. Well, he did. Okay. So 2 years goes by and I'm calling every Tuesday. Yeah, I'm still in the States. Yeah, I'm still making sure that I don't miss my bond calling or they'll come arrest me, bring me back to South Carolina for 2 years. Calling. So one day I finally got pissed and I was like, you know what? I called the attorney. I said, "Yo, what's going on, man?" I said, "You made me do a proffer agreement and you guys put me on a polygraph and you did all these interrogations and you made me testify against my buddy," which helped his testimony actually, because that's why I wanted to do it. I was like, "Yeah, I'll testify against him." Man, they were fucked when I came in there, but that's another story. Anyway, but I knew what I was doing, so I was like, "Yeah, fine." Well, the deal was if I did that for them, then they would dismiss my case, right? They never did. So I get on the phone with the attorney and I'm like, "Dude," and he's like, "Oh, all these excuses are coming out." Well, this is 3 weeks, right? Goes by. And I'm like, damn, did this son of a bitch even put a motion to dismiss in? It's 2 years later and I just called him and now 3 more weeks has gone by and I haven't heard anything. So I was like, fuck this. I'm going to get online and check my case and see if he put a motion in. That way, if he didn't put it in, I got proof because I checked the case. I'm going to call him and rip him a new ass.
The attorney you had gotten?
Yeah, it's the attorney I got. Bless his heart, he got me out of there, but he didn't do anything else. So I go online and I check my case and it says case dismissed 3 months ago. Now, I just talked to him 3 weeks ago. Why didn't he tell me it was dismissed?
What the hell?
Right. And I was like, what? So I called him. I said, "Hey, my case, why didn't you tell me my case is dismissed?" "I didn't know it was dismissed." "Or what? That's crazy. Nobody told me. That's not right. That doesn't happen." I'm like, "Well, it fucking happened today." So I called the bond company. I said, "You guys, I've been calling you for 3 months and you didn't tell me my case was dismissed." They're like, "What are you talking about? We never got a notice. Every time case dismissed, it comes right up." And she goes, "Hold on, honey. Let me check your case." She gets online. She's like, "I'll be damned. I ain't never seen nothing like it." "Okay, free to go." I'm like, what? What the fuck? Now, the Attorney General signed off on it. So the judge or the Attorney General never called me. My attorney never called me. The bond company never called me. I never was notified. So then I was like, wait a minute, what date is this? And I looked at the date it was dismissed and I went back to my records and I looked at when the judge received my package, and it was 2 days prior to that dismissal date. That's how fast it took. And here's how I knew I was going to hit him, where it hurt. In Maryland, there's 3 probate judges in each county. 2 of them are lay judges, because remember, I was all in that probate code, okay? 2 of them are lay judges, which means they've never been to law school and they don't have a bar card. Only the chief, well, not even the chief administrative probate judge, but there's 1 probate judge out of the 3 of them that has a bar card and has been to law school.
Right.
So I noticed that the chief judge of the probate court didn't. He actually was an HVAC guy. He had an HVAC business. That's what he did. And he was a probate judge. So all my shit went to him privately, and I put him under an NDA. I said, this is not for anyone else's eyes. I'm appointing you as the trustee to handle this business. This is your job. Well, I knew he doesn't know anything about law. He's got to break the NDA. He's got to take it to someone. What the fuck does he know? I never got a response in all my paperwork that I was sending him. I say all, it was like a few mailings, like 3 mailings that I sent him. And I never heard a word from this guy. And my case was dismissed and everything, right? So a year later, I'm like, I gave them motherfuckers $5 million. Okay. Surely there's more money in my account because those charges were not $5 million. So I wrote to the judge. Okay. And this is when they exposed, who we went to get the job done. So I wrote to the judge, never responded to me out of all that time, except for when I wrote him and asked for the balance on my account. I'd like a full accounting on that note on that draft that I gave you. Okay. Full accounting. All of a sudden I get a letter back from the Maryland Attorney General. The probate court, Judge so-and-so and the Maryland probate courts no longer have jurisdiction in this matter. Not we don't have no longer have jurisdiction in this matter. And I was like, well, that's fucking interesting. That's who is in charge of doing all the exchange and dismissals and all, the Treasury's Attorney General. Who signed off in South Carolina? Attorney General. Who did the judge run to? The county attorney who ran to the state attorney, because they're all under that umbrella. And that's who did the discharge, because I gave him the instrument to do the discharge.
But he never gave you an accounting though.
Never gave me an accounting, but that's all right. I just laughed. I was like, you bastards. But I did it once, I do it again, So I just haven't yet because I have no reason at this point. I got too much shit going on. I mean, I'm sure I will at some point, but yeah. So that's how the shit's working, man. I mean, it's not hard stuff. It's just understanding, like, you've got everything right there with the certificates. And I mean, it's right in your face, man. It's like, grab that thing, disclaim it all, contract, everything. Once you do your declaration status, you disclaim every contract, nunc pro tunc ab initio, as was then is now from the beginning, bam, done. Okay, now from this point forward, I'm on my side of the fence, you're on yours, I'm giving you all notice, and I'm taking that fucking devil and I'm giving it over to the trust that holds it.
I like that. I like that portion of it, because then it separates, like, you as a man may have through administrative process closed it out, regain control of it, but to then give it into the trust separates it a further, a sphere away from you.
Right. Because I gave up title to it and ownership.
Yeah.
And it's the records are clear to see that assignment was done,
right.
So once that assignment's done, I mean, what can they say,
Well, it's a lot of paperwork for them to go through to figure. I mean, like it's the truth is they had, like you said, they had proper notice and opportunity to respond, and they didn't. So through commercial process, you closed them out from any further say, but then you took it like 2 or 3 more steps further. And so they're like, shit, where's this entity even belong? What is this entity even at this point?
Yep. And remember, I've got substantive records, meaning all my shit is under oath and recorded and authenticated. Ain't nobody on that side of the fence going to swear to anything. And if they do, they're going to swear under what? 28 USC 1746-2. They're not going to swear under 46-1. Well, all my shit's under 46-1, which is superior jurisdiction, so they're fucked.
Right. Once
3 ways from Sunday.
Once again, contract law, the one jurisdiction is everything, and then the other code is just their contract.
Right. It's just their shit, their world.
Exactly.
So using 28 USC 1746-1 brings them back pre-Civil War,
Exactly.
So, yeah, man,
I love
that's
it.
what's up. But I'm going to have to get rolling because I got company coming over, man. I apologize.
Oh man, I'm glad. Like we said, we're gonna keep it short and sweet. We can end it here, and man, we'll let the people know once again about your program, what you got as far as guidance. Obviously, it's not financial advice that you're selling. It's just a template, as you said, of your experience. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the best thing. And once again, is to let people know, if you want to get into this, you got to do your own research, because it's your own contracts you're looking to undo. It's your own new private contracts you're looking to create, and you want to be able to create your world in the way you want to see it created, right? And that's the
Yep.
whole point, is you want to be able to start fresh and create how you want to create, and know the contracts that you're actually creating. You
Absolutely.
have to do your own research.
You do. And my goal is to simplify the points that make all of those contracts valid and invalid, right? The 14th Amendment thing, you've got hardcore evidence that the United States of America is not the United States, right in 28 USC 1746-1. It tells you right there in an oath, no less, which is super powerful, So that's my thing. And anybody that wants to get into that can go to truthandtrust.org. It's truth and the letter N, like Nancy, trust.org. Or they could go on Facebook too, and they can join the Facebook group, which is Truth and AND Trust Group. They can go on there. Usually I don't let people post, I don't let people just post random shit up there. There's too many groups where people just throw stuff at the wall and they keep,
Well, that's
which
it.
is fine.
It's the same reason that we were talking about it. We want to keep the truth simple and give people what it is that we're looking for them to see, not a whole bunch of crap just thrown in at once.
Right. Exactly.
I'm glad you gave the people your web address and everything.
Yeah,
Brother,
man.
let you go. Have a beautiful
Thank
night,
you, brother.
friends. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, let's do this again, man. Have a great holiday, and love you, man. Thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Love you too, brother. Happy holidays to you as well.
You too, man. Take care. Bye-bye.
Peace, man.